So Jason, thanks so much for coming by on a Sunday. I know you've been in Kelowna about 3.5 years.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's start. Tell us the story of how you ended up in Kelowna 3.5 years ago.
So we ended up in Kelowna on purpose. That process started probably a year and a half even before we moved here. And my wife and I had gotten to a point in our lives where we'd had a couple of kids and we'd started to think about, what do we want our life to really look like? Like, what lifestyle do we want? What kind of work do we want to do? What kind of place do we want to live? What kind of people do we want to associate with? All of the aspects of life that, people think about or should think about, right? Mm-hmm. And we looked at everything. We looked at moving to Europe. We looked at opportunities down in the U.S., different opportunities across Canada. I've been fortunate enough to live in a number of the Canadian provinces, so I kind of knew where I did and did not want to live. And but when the dust finally settled, the reality was we found a place that ticked all those boxes here at home. And for me, that was an opportunity to move back to BC from Alberta, and that meant moving here to the central Okanagan. So, cool. That's how we ended up here, yeah.
So you grew up in BC then? I
did. I grew up in northern BC.
Northern BC, okay. Yeah. And how did you become familiar with Kelowna? Like, what you say is totally true. I mean, it ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people.
For sure, yeah.
But did you vacation here, or were you just doing Google searches and trying to find the right town? Like, how did you discover Kelowna?
So that's a great question. So in our case, it was kind of three things. So my wife's family is originally from West Kelowna, so she had some familial connections. Yeah. I had started coming here. I've been interested in wine my whole life. My grandfather was a sommelier, kind of part time. It was a passion of his, and so I get it naturally.
Yeah, right.
And so I'd been coming to Kelowna since the late '90s, since I was old enough, essentially, to come and taste wine and go to different wine events and get involved in the wine industry a little bit and dabble in that a little. Yeah. And then, of course, when I was young, growing up in northern BC, we used to come for our annual family ski trip to Big White, and that was in the late 80s and early 90s. Mm-hmm. And so quite familiar. I've been coming here off and on for vacations and holidays over the years, and then, I met my wife in Alberta, and of course she had some family connections, so which just kind of made it easier.
Just totally made sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned to me that you had applied for jobs in the States. Yeah. So you were considering the States.
We were.
What parts of the States were you thinking of?
So we were looking for a certain kind of lifestyle I mentioned before. So to elaborate on that a little bit, there are a couple of things in our lives that are really important to us. For me, one is mountains and trees. I love trees. I love the mountains. I love forests. I grew up in the mountains, and we're avid skiers. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted an area that gave us access to that sort of environment and that kind of, the skiing on the doorstep and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we looked at Colorado. We looked at northern Nevada, like the Tahoe area kind of thing. We looked for 2 minutes at the eastern U.S., like kind of Vermont area, but we kind of crossed that off the list pretty quick.
Really? How come?
I think we're just more West Coast people, and it's not the same. Their mountains aren't really tall enough.
Yeah, right. They're more like big hills. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted. We kind of knew what we wanted, right? And we wanted a good mid-sized community too, like not a small town, but not a city.
Not a big city. Yeah.
Right.
So Denver is like a pretty huge city, right?
Exactly, right? So we were looking kind of Colorado Springs area, like kind of south of Denver, right? And Colorado Springs, I think, is a little bigger than Kelowna. I think it's probably maybe, and I don't know, but I think it's 300,000 or 400,000 or something. So it's a little bigger than Kelowna, I think. Yep. But we wanted a community kind of in that size, like 250,000 and under. So big enough that you have all your amenities, small enough though that you can be involved in the community and have a sense of community without kind of going out of your way or trying really hard, right? Yeah. And for my kids, a community that was small enough where they would, run into friends at different events, and it wasn't a challenge to drive half an hour across town to take your kid to a play date, but that you had a sense of community that you could kind of dig into and join, and that they could grow up with that.
Yeah. So what would you say tipped the balance to Kelowna from some of these American choices, which sound like pretty good choices?
Well, a couple things. So I have a European passport, so we did look at some places in Switzerland and France as well. And that would have been easy because I already had the passport, so I could start a job and go right away. And of course, my wife by marriage would have access to that as well.
Right.
Don't have a green card, and neither does my wife. So the U.S., it was a little tricky. I did interview for a few positions with some banks down in the U.S., and at the end of the day, what it came down to was they would be willing to, they would have been willing to probably provide a visa and start that process. But that would have meant my wife wouldn't have been able to work for 3 to 5 years. Wow. There was some other challenges there. And she's a pretty passionate lady. She likes to do, she likes to be a contributor, and she likes to be involved, and she likes to work, and that gives her a sense of value, and it just wasn't quite the right thing.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
And then, Kelowna worked out. I mean, we have, like I said, we have family here. We have friends that live here. So it just, for those reasons, that I would say that's what tipped it towards Kelowna,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've done a ton of different, diverse professions. So you've been a journalist, you've been a ski coach, you've been a construction worker, a banker, a real estate investor, and a public speaker. Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
I do. Things? So I would say I probably have two. And the one that's not on the list, ironically, is the work that I do now, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I'm a regional account executive for Manulife for their group benefits business.
Okay.
And I really enjoy that work. I get to work with business owners. We provide products that add value to people's lives, health and dental plans, disability and other insurances, just in case people run into those kind of situations. Yeah. So I've been in the finance industry for most of my career. I've done a lot of things, but I have most of the actual hours have been spent in the finance industry. And now I'm in finance, but working with a product that I think has a little more value to people than, say, like a mortgage or a bank account or one of these commoditized finance products that you can kind of get from anywhere, right? Yes. So I really enjoy that, and I've been doing this type of work for quite a while now. And then the other one is I really enjoy public speaking, actually. And I'm taking steps to have that become a larger part of my life. Nice. Stay tuned. I'm working on something that I can't really talk about yet. Okay. But it's hopefully gonna make that a larger part of my life. Yeah. And I'll have to come back again in the future. We'll have another chat, and I can share some of that with you. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some overlap here because, kind of what I'm doing with this podcast is journalism in a sense, because it's more community interest stuff than current events.
Sure.
Because I love to interview people and get to know people and hear their life story and so on. And it involves public speaking, obviously, because here we are speaking. Yeah. So I do have some familiarity with the public speaking world, and I took some courses, and I know that there's a big gap between people who do it kind of like, Chamber of Commerce and local events, and then people who actually get paid.
That's right.
And there are people, aside from celebrities, who get many thousands of dollars sometimes for a speech. So absolutely, what can you tell us about the industry without giving away, what you're working on?
So what I can share is my goal is to become one of the latter folks there. Right. So I've been paid a couple of times for speaking engagements, but not very much, not thousands of dollars. Right. So as you would know, it's an industry kind of like, I would say, any artistic industry, where when you start out, you're going to play the coffee shop gig. You're going to give that local speech at a Chamber of Commerce event, at a charity event, at a elementary school, at a college as a guest speaker or a guest lecturer, at all these opportunities that exist in the community if you're interested, right? So you're going to do all these kind of opportunities, and you're not going to get paid a dime. Right? So you're going to do a lot of prep, a lot of practice. It's kind of like if you wanted to become an athlete, right? Yes. You spend thousands of hours in the amateur ranks before you ever make it to the pros.
That's right. You don't decide to be a Major League Baseball player and join the Toronto Blue Jays.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So you kind of need to work through those steps. So, but you have to take action. You have to work through those steps, right? And so for myself, I discovered a few years ago that I had a little talent. People seem to respond positively to when I spoke. And I'm fortunately wired in such a way that I'm not scared. The largest audience I've spoken to is about 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And I was good. I just picture them naked. I look for the ugliest people in the. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean. You just work through those mental exercises to prepare yourself. But I don't have that paralyzing fear or nerves that a lot of people do. So. And I enjoy it. I tend to be someone who's pretty good at communicating information in a way that most people can kind of get it. So so I've had a lot of opportunities, and it kind of happened a little bit by accident. It wasn't something that I aspired to like as a child or a teenager. But it's something that I've discovered I really, really enjoy.
So tell us, there sounds like there's a story there that it happened by accident. I'm guessing someone invited you to speak, or you had a fill-in situation, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done, and I've been doing for a very long time, is coaching. And I've coached athletes in freestyle skiing. I've also coached soccer. I've coached a little basketball. And I've done cross-training as well and gymnastics. I've coached a lot of sports. And through coaching, usually you have a group of 15 or 20 people you're talking to all the time. Right? And then through coaching, I organically evolved into leadership roles, so head coaches. So now I'm talking to a whole program, so it's 100 kids, or it's 50 kids of parents or whoever. And so out of coaching actually is where I got my first opportunities in Calgary to speak. A couple of parents in an audience one time, they said, we really enjoyed your the way you communicated all the information in the sort of the launch meeting for a program that I was leading. And they said, would you mind giving a talk about amateur sport? And so I ended up
to kids or parents.
It was actually just an open lecture at U of C, actually.
Oh, cool.
Like kind of a night class lecture sort of thing. That was the first sort of non-work related or non-work relating public speaking opportunity that I had was that.
Yeah.
And I did it, and it was really good, and it's evolved now. I worked for ATB Financial in Alberta for a while, and I had an opportunity to do public speaking for them. I facilitated some courses with their corporate department, talking about some sales training, and then I facilitated some HR stuff around benefits and all of that. So I got lots of opportunities to speak to managers, senior leadership, and sort of cut my chops in the corporate boardroom a little bit that way.
Yep. Which
segued into when I moved to Kelowna. I met some amazing people, and we started an organization called the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group.
Right.
Which is a phenomenal organization here in the community that is designed to do a couple of things, primarily to help people who are interested in using real estate as an alternative income vehicle. So you want to create some wealth, and maybe you like your job and you don't want to become a flipper like on TV, but you'd like to maybe see what opportunities exist and what the alternatives are. Not just mutual funds. What else can you do, right?
Right.
So OREIG looks at people who don't really have a lot of experience and people who do as well. There's kind of a good mix at the events, but I would say the focus of the organization is to introduce or help people who are maybe just getting into real estate to better understand it, connect them with people who have a lot more experience, connect them with trainers and experts at the different types of real estate investment to help them create some wealth through real estate.
Yes.
My parents didn't have any money growing up. The only money I've ever made in my life, at least so far, has come through real estate. We started in Calgary. We would, back in the 2000s, you could buy houses with zero down, and in Calgary, the way it was working at the time, you could do new construction. So we would buy a new construction home with 5% down.
Wow.
It would be built. By the time it was built, the market had gone up 5 or 10%. You would sell that house, make your 5%, 5-10% on the gross, and Bob's your uncle, away you go. 2008 happened. There was some challenges around that, as you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
We were pretty fortunate. We didn't get burned too bad. A lot of people did. We didn't, thankfully. We were able to kind of move on from there and again, do a little bit more of that. Wasn't quite as lucrative as it had been, but that's okay. All good things must come to an end, as they say, right? And then we learn and evolve. Yes. So, and then I've done a few other things since then. I've done some joint venture deals and a few other things, and it's a passion of mine. It's it's a side gig for me. It's not a full-time thing, but it's something that I really enjoy. I like the vehicle because at the end of the day, unlike my mutual funds, which I don't know where they are or what they look like physically, I know what this investment looks like. I can feel it, touch it, taste it if I really wanted to, I guess. So OREG is designed to introduce people to what those opportunities might look like, as well as provide a networking venue for people who are real estate investors. And that can be anybody. There are obviously a lot of industry folks, such as yourself, mortgage brokers, appraisers, lawyers, people who are in the industry that are members of OREG, different realtors and things. But there are also a lot of investors. So we've got everybody from folks who, have very large portfolios, hundreds of properties across Canada that are involved in that organization, right to young people who are, looking to buy their first property or looking to get into it. And so we wanted to educate people. We wanted to create a networking opportunity. And then we wanted to bring the experts to Kelowna. We wanted to bring the top people to Kelowna and have them share their stories and share their messages.
That's a great concept. I'm seeing your posts on Facebook and social media, and I have not attended an event yet, and I'm embarrassed to admit it.
It's all good. You'll have to get out. It's awesome.
And I want to know, I've got a project overseas, so I'm curious if you ever have investors that are looking to kind of expand.
So OREG has an advisor board, and one of the advisors is a gentleman by the name of John Simcoe he actually lives in Vernon part-time now, and he has experience doing...
John.
There you go. So John's got experience doing resorts and stuff in other parts of the world, and he comes to mind right away as someone who has financing connections. He has experience in those markets. I've never done any of that stuff. I have no idea where to even start, but he does. He's got a lot of experience, and that's the really cool thing about OREG is, there you go. You asked me a question like that, I know someone, and I met them at OREG, right? And that's the really cool thing about that organization is it kind of brings everybody together, and we can all learn from each other, and opportunities come up. I've partnered with quite a few OREG members on, whether it was a rent-to-own venture or we did a flip or who knows, brokering a project or whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Right. Can you tell me a little bit about what is an investor like? So a strictly capital investor is going to put cash into the deal.
Yeah.
Are they typically looking for a percentage guaranteed return or a percentage of the equity, or how does that typically get structured? Do they act as a bank, like we're going to give you a mortgage? And
so that's a great question. So there's a myriad of ways to do that, and we could spend hours talking about the different joint venture structures. There's a couple of ways. The most common one in Canada is just a joint venture deal and a joint venture agreement that outlines, for example, Luke is contributing this much money, right? Jason is contributing probably a lesser amount of money, but he's going to do all this other work to compensate, and we're going to do this division of the net profits on the deal. And that's usually how those things are structured. That would be the simplest and most common approach, would be a joint venture agreement. And those, depending on the scope of the deal, like I just outlined a really basic structure, but that can get more or less complicated depending on how complicated or how large the project is, right? I mean, if you're building a 20-story high-rise, there's probably not one person. There's probably a syndicated mortgage with 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 people in it, all contributing different amounts, and you have a law firm managing the paperwork, and down to maybe we want to buy a rental property together, and I'm happy to be the landlord and you're happy to be the bank. So you buy the house, I manage the property, and we split the same way that formally you could facilitate that as a realtor and then hire a property manager to do that. On a formal level, you can do it informally via a joint venture.
Yes.
Right. So,
how often do you guys meet?
So OREG has meetings every month, and I don't know when this podcast is going to air.
I'm going to try to get it done sooner. I need to catch up. We've got a couple of interns now helping with the audio. So this is going to be episode 90.
That's amazing.
And we just
Congratulations.
released 45 or 46, so we're a little bit behind.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Wow.
Several long days, but it's doable.
That's an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you
That's
very
great.
much. They say the average podcaster quits after episode 11.
Really?
So the average podcast has 11 episodes and then they quit. So some are 3 or 4 and they give up, and some are 20 and they give up. But average is 11.
Wow.
We're at 90. So
You're knocking it out of the park. And you've been 2 years now?
No, not even. We started in June.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So
you're
like
knocking it out of the park.
3-4 interviews a week. And to me, it's like the easiest thing I've ever done because I just love picking your brain.
That's
you
cool.
know, you've got
awesome.
your expertise and everything.
Yeah.
And here I am, picking your brain.
For sure.
Selfishly gaining a lot of knowledge for myself.
Sure.
But hopefully, beneficial to the audience as well, right?
That's awesome.
So
the meetings are the third Thursday of every month. So to make it easier. So regardless of when this podcast airs or whenever the listener is listening to it, they're the third Thursday of every month.
And do you meet at the same place?
We do. It may be changing in the future. So the best thing I could say is check the website out. And the website is www.okanaganreig.com.
Okay.
It's the third Thursday of every month, usually at 7 o'clock.
And it's about 2 hours?
Yeah, about 2 hours.
And you'll have like different speakers and a Q&A period, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so last month, as an example, we had a speaker that talked to us a little bit about flipping and about what the strategies they use and their experience. And this particular individual was flipping in Kelowna, so they did 4 in the last year. So they shared kind of what that looked like. They did some houses and some condos, and so they talked about those markets and challenges with selling properties, lessons they learned along the way, what worked really well, like all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. This month I'm actually moderating the panel this month, and on the panel we have a realtor, I have an economist from the RDCO, and a company called New Realty Research. They're a Kelowna-based company that does real estate market analytics, mostly for developers. So they do a lot of large condo tower stuff, and they're based in Kelowna, but they do everything all over. They work in the Lower Mainland, they work Calgary, Edmonton, they're kind of all over Western Canada. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all, but
I haven't heard of them, but that's awesome.
Yeah, the principal there, I think his name is Sam, is going to be on the panel as well.
Great.
And so we're going to have a great chat about the market, where it's at. And we look at it a little different than, say, like a real estate update. Like a realtor update will focus on kind of that snapshot in time. Our panel is going to talk more from an investor mindset about here's where the market is in this current cycle. Mm-hmm. Here's the best that we can kind of predict the next 6 months or 12 months, what we think is going to happen. So as an investor, what does that mean? Like, how would you best take advantage of this situation today?
Yes.
And we really try and keep that perspective in focus, where it's not necessarily about the market. It's more about the investor mindset and what strategy should you be using or should you be thinking about at this point in the market.
Can you give us a couple of teasers?
A teaser? Sure, yeah. So I can share a few things.
My view is it's pretty mixed. So there's pockets of softness for sure.
There is.
But I think people should be a little more aggressive right now. I see a lot of hesitation. My clients are investors.
Yeah.
Are kind of like, don't know what's happening. I'm going to wait.
So we're not done preparing 100%, but here's what I would share so far. Last year on our panel discussion, the results that came out of the conversation last year, and we do this every year, this will be the third annual, we call it our market prediction or our crystal ball prediction, right? Not everybody has a crystal ball, but I like to think I do. And my crystal ball is made up of people. It's not a magic ball, but it's really people who are a lot smarter than I am. And I just listen to them. So last year, the commentary was along the lines of, look, this market, if it hasn't peaked, it's going to peak very soon. As an investor, what do you do in a peaking market? Well, you take your properties that are underperforming and you get rid of them. You clean them up, you sell them, you free up capital so that when the market turns, you can start to move into acquisition mode and look for opportunities. Yes. So that was the message that came out of last year's panel discussion. And you work in the real estate market, so you know where the market was last year. It ended up peaking probably in March, April of last year. So
correct.
Of like 10 months ago, last winter, essentially would be kind of the absolute peak, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where we were at last year. And like I said, keeping that investor mindset in focus, a peaking market means it's an opportunity to clean up your portfolio, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a portfolio, if you have a small portfolio, maybe it's an opportunity to look at leveraging. So if you're playing the long game, then you don't really care what your property price is going to be in 2 years. then maybe at the peak of a market, you'll refinance because you can pull the most money out of a property, and then hold it and reinvest it when the market turns, right? It's the old principle, right? Buy low, sell high, right? So those kinds of strategies at a peaking market, essentially freeing up capital, creating efficiency in your portfolio, looking at some of these things. And then now we're at a point where we're definitely riding I wouldn't call it a roller coaster, but we're in a down market, or the market is going in that direction. So as an investor, does that mean you should stay out of the market? No, it means the opposite. It means you should start spending time researching what different markets that you're interested in are doing. So the neighborhoods that you're interested in, what are they doing? Are they turning? Where's the value? What kind of properties? We see a lot of bulk data in the real estate world, as you know. So they'll talk about median house price. In Kelowna, median house price is a misnomer, because the problem is our expensive real estate is beholden mostly to people that don't live here.
Yes.
So that real estate is extremely volatile, and more than it is in other markets where the wealthy people live in those properties.
Yes.
So what happens is, in 2008, we saw really expensive real estate drop 30, 40%. But at the low end, the entry-level product for a single-family home, it dropped maybe 5%, right? Which is kind of nothing over a 10-year period. If you think about that sort of, 10-year real estate cycle we're all kind of familiar with, 5% is nothing, right? So
do you see a similar?
I think so, right? I think in Kelowna that's always going to be the case. I think there's in most markets that have a bit of a self-sufficient economy, which we're starting to as we continue to grow here in the central Okanagan, when you have a turn in the real estate market, the more expensive the property, the more volatile that price is going to be.
Yeah.
As you get to the bottom, you get to the entry-level single-family product, well, those higher-end people, if they have to liquidate, say there's a stock market turn, which we haven't seen yet, which is kind of the big elephant in the room that nobody knows what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Not to go down a tangent too much, but one of the challenges that we have that I find not a lot of people talk about is that because we do have a lot of real estate held by people that don't live here, in other words, it's investment real estate or it's vacation real estate, that product is beholden to the markets. Because people that have the money to do that, a lot of times they also have a lot of money invested in capital markets, whether it's the stock market or commodities or whatever, right? So if those markets turn, that really impacts their buying power, and they may end up looking to liquidate some of that stuff, or if the market doesn't turn and they do well, while those vacation property prices are going down, it's a purchase opportunity, right?
Yes.
So the big elephant in the room right now, and the one that nobody seems to be able to answer, is what's the stock market going to do in the next year?
Yes.
We don't know. Last year, we thought we were going to see a turn in the market in 2018, and most of the major economists and the major stock market gurus were predicting up to a 20% market correction in 2018. I haven't seen it. We've seen a lot of volatility, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of bouncing, but we haven't seen a turn in the market.
Yes.
I don't follow the stock market. I'm not a stock market analyst, so I'm nervous commenting on that. And most people I talk to, even the stock market analysts, are really nervous commenting on that for 2019.
Right.
And the reality is they don't know. The market is not following the algorithms right now.
Right.
That's what a lot of them would say, and anybody can Google articles and find information that would say that.
Yes.
So until the market, that's the elephant in the room. If the stock market doesn't turn, well, then we would assume that our market actually won't go down that much.
Right.
We'll see a slow in volume, which we've seen, right? The volume of sales dollars has gone down.
Correct.
But prices have started to turn, but they're not moving very much.
Right. So I see, personally, I see a few differences from 2008. Like you said, there is a greater percentage of people living here instead of vacation homes.
Yeah.
It's still a huge segment of the market, and like you said, especially in the luxury segment.
Right.
But just anecdotally, if you think of Sunset Drive, Waterscapes, and all those condos, when I moved here in 2011, after Labor Day, that was kind of like a ghost town. And Bouchon's, I think, would close for 2 months every single year.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody would be, temporarily laid off to go on vacations. Now, most of the people at Waterscapes actually live at Waterscapes, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of shifted.
Yeah, you still can't find parking on Sunset even in December.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like in the $400,000 to $600,000 segment, there was a lot of those properties that used to be vacation properties that are now kind of working people living and working here. But the luxury end, I agree with you. I see like days on market is like anything over $1 million. It can be really bad, like months and months.
Yeah.
Also, like when it comes to the stock market, my experience tells me it's really a psychological thing, even more so than a financial thing. So you have people with equity and they can purchase vacation property, but if they're pessimistic, if they're feeling pessimistic, they tend to pull back.
That's right.
I'm not going to buy that third car. I'm not going to buy that second vacation property. I'm going to wait. The economy is uncertain. So it's more like how they're feeling than actual ability to purchase things.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
I totally agree. And I think that the emotional impact probably comes even before we see any financial repercussions or any, an actual numeric turn in the market, right? Yeah. So, and I totally agree with you. So that's the part that makes me nervous for 2019 is those external pressures. I haven't found someone who's confident putting a prediction down for 2019 on what those external pressures look like. I think we have a pretty good handle on our market here in the central Okanagan. Our DCO does a lot of work. They have some amazing data that they're going to share with us. And New Realty Research, like I said, because they work with most of the major developers in town, they've got it drilled down to by product mix within the neighborhoods, and they break the central Okanagan up to about, I think, 80 different neighborhoods. So they've got some pretty amazing, pretty detailed data. So I think we have a pretty good handle on how, like our market here, the risk, of course, is those external pressures. And like I said, I haven't found anyone who's confident in making any predictions on what those are going to look like for 2019.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's who knows, right?
Yeah.
We do our best to predict and to estimate, right? But it's a tricky game, right?
Now, with my Cayman Islands project, just to let you know, so I lived there for 11 years. I was a property manager. I owned real estate. I foolishly sold it in 2008. So I shouldn't have done that, but I was watching CNN too much, and I really believe the entire financial universe was coming to a screeching halt. So I liquidated it.
Yep.
And it was pretty bad, but the Cayman Islands and Switzerland and havens like that were much more resilient than some of the most pessimistic people were saying.
That's right.
And so, long story short, I kept my passport, so I'm still a citizen of the Cayman Islands. I bought some land, and it's approved for a duplex. So my plan is I'm going to build a duplex. I'm going to put a long-term tenant in one, and someone who is, I've got some experience with this, and I think, from an investor point of view, having a good tenant, your job is like the easiest job in the world.
Yep.
Having a bad tenant can cause you ulcers, stress, financial problems. So having a great tenant is just like the best. I used to pick up the rent check, maybe change a couple light bulbs, sweep the hallway, walk to the bank, deposit.
That's right.
Pay my mortgage and go to the beach. Like that was pretty much like 50% of my job back then.
Tenant management, as you know, is a science. It's also an art, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to read people. You have to be able to kind of know. And I would almost say like you kind of probably need to get burned a couple times too to learn some lessons, right?
Definitely.
And hopefully they don't either cost you too much or get you out of the game.
Definitely.
But education is key, and even if you don't want to take a property management course, I would strongly encourage everybody. I mean, there's a lot of courses out there. There's a couple of people in the Central Okanagan even that offer tenant management training, right? We can't call it property management because you need a certification for that.
Right.
So there are people that offer tenant management training, which is really learning the people side of that business, right? Starting to like little tricks. Like I'll share a few tricks with your listeners that are awesome. No, the best trick that's worked for me that I've heard over the years, and this has been, I don't like putting guarantees on things, but this is a good one. And that is, anytime you meet a tenant, when you walk them to their car after your meeting and look inside the car.
Yeah.
The way the inside of the car looks is the way your property is going to look. And that's almost a surefire thing.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So if their car's a mess, guess what?
Yeah.
Right?
They're not going to really take care of it.
That's right.
Yeah. That's such a good point. I don't know if you've ever done this or heard of this, but a few years ago, I was a tenant and I was renting a fully furnished place, long story, but the landlord, so I called him. He's like, it's still available. He asked me a few questions and he's like, I would like to come. He says, where are you right now? And I said, I'm actually at my home office. He says, I would like to come see you right now. Yeah. I said, right now? He's like, right now. Right? And he explained to me later, he put me on the spot because he wanted to see how I'd react if I made a bunch of excuses. I found it a little bit strange, but I was grateful because he came at my places, as you can see, it's usually pretty spotless.
That's right, yeah, absolutely.
And he was like, okay, you can rent this place if you want, because I see the way you take care of your current place, right? And that he wanted to put me on the spot and see how I react.
Things like that are great, right? Those little checks and balances, right? I've personally never done that. I'm not that ballsy to go to someone's current residence,
right?
But that's a great tip as well, right? As a tenant current, anytime you have an opportunity to see how your potential tenant lives their regular life, right? And how they roll when they're not under pressure or not trying to impress anybody or to demonstrate that they're, capable or they're a qualified tenant or whatever, right? I mean, we all do it, right? You go for a job interview, you put on your best suit, not your regular suit. You go, you're looking for a property, you go visit a property, you make sure you're all cleaned up and ready to go, right? We all do, right?
Yeah.
So anytime you have an opportunity as a landlord to see your potential tenants in their normal environment, I totally agree. Like I tend. One mistake I find people make all the time is they meet people at coffee shops, right? And I would always say meet them either at the property that you're renting, right? Mm-hmm. Or meet them, usually I try to meet them at the property they're renting. And like I said, I use my car trick.
Yes.
The other thing I do is I key into their facial expressions, right? So if they're, kind of indifferent about the property or they seem desperate or something like that, right? To me, usually those are indicators, and they're indicators that maybe they're under the gun. And sometimes it's not their fault.
Right.
Maybe their current landlords decide to sell a property or do something with it, and it's not their fault. But at least knowing, this person is, they seem a little more stressed than they should be about this situation, or maybe they don't seem to actually like this place, but they just need a place. Mm-hmm. Those are indicators that would tell you that this probably isn't the ideal tenant. Again, because they aren't going to value and appreciate your property as much as maybe they should.
Yes.
Right? Another one that I use all the time is big dogs. I love big dogs. I rent to people with big dogs all the time. Mm-hmm. Most landlords won't. They have concerns about the dogs destroying the property.
Yes.
And I would say meet the dogs. Because if you meet the dog and the dog in the property and the dog's not acting out, the dog's under control, it's obedient, it's well behaved, usually the only thing that'll get destroyed is floors, and as a landlord there's ways to manage that by the type of flooring
final plank.
Final plank, exactly, right? Exactly, right? So there's ways to manage that. Or I have a property that has hardwood floors in the basement suite, but they've been in there forever. And they're all destroyed anyway. So we rent it to people with big dogs. When they're gone, run the sander over it, coat of lacquer, call it done. Next tenants move in, right?
Yep.
Those hardwood floors are going to last 50 years. They can destroy them as much as they want. So, and people with big dogs are appreciative. They tend to be more grateful, I find, because not a lot of places will rent to them. Yeah. And sometimes you can even get a premium for your property. So as an investor, you have that opportunity as well. Right?
I think that's a great piece of advice. Like meet the pets, meet the children.
Meet the pets, meet the kids. Absolutely.
If the kids are just running wild and going crazy, like it's a sign that they're not really in control of the household.
That's right. Right? Absolutely. Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, the tenants. The best tenants, like you said, are tenants who value and appreciate having a place to live that's nice, that's safe, that's secure. Yeah. where they're not under pressure. So the other thing I find with tenants is be really honest with what you want as a landlord. So, it's the old adage of, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? But you don't have to do a 1-year lease. I've signed 2-year leases, 3-year leases, and I've also signed 3-month leases because listen, I only want you here for 3 months. After that, we're going to do this with this property, right? Yeah. Are you okay with that, Mr. Tenant? Right? Being really clear with what your longer term strategy is with your tenants, I think is really important too, because that will organically weed out people who maybe aren't on the same page with you in terms of what they're looking for. Yeah. Because sometimes you do want someone who's going to live there for 5 or 10 years. Sometimes you don't, right? Yeah.
So in Grand Cayman, just to tell you a little more, the town that I bought this land in is called West Bay, and it's very similar to Rutland in the sense that there's nice areas. There's, it's mostly middle class, working class people. And I figured that whether the economy contracts or expands, it's going to be rentable. Totally. Not really.
You're in the sweet spot where there's always going to be demand.
Exactly. And it is nice, it's not really slummy or anything like that. So I like to compare it to Rutland because Rutland kind of had a bad reputation, but it's a really nice, middle class place.
Yeah, I think that reputation's going away over time.
It is going away. The biggest problem I've had is with people from out of town.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, we were told not to go there.
That's right.
And it's really not true. But people who grew up here, they know it's
when we moved here, the same thing. My wife's cousins that live over in Glenmore said, oh, just anywhere but Rutland. Right? And then I lived in an area of Calgary called Bowness. And some of your listeners that would be familiar with Calgary will know. Bowness is kind of like it's one area that could be compared to Rutland, right? I would say it compares to definitely the kind of the part of Rutland that's around Costco, right? Yeah. Like that sort of like, I don't know if you would call it the slightly nicer area, but kind of that more single family home, big trees kind of area, right? Yeah. In Bowness, but in Bowness they have the stickers that say, they have bumper stickers that say, I love Bowness and straight out of Bowness. And then the first time we came here to look at houses, I saw a straight out of Rutland sticker on the back of a car. And I said to my wife, I'm like, we should move there. I'm like, these are my people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, duplex, I want to put a long-term tenant in half.
Awesome.
And someone who can help a little bit with, just picking up trash.
Right.
And, be a little bit of a property manager, but someone who's conscientious, take care of it.
Yeah.
And then the other half is going to be an Airbnb, and it's fairly easy to get an Airbnb license there. They charge tax. There's not very much tax in the Cayman Islands. There's no property tax.
Right.
There's no income tax. There's no capital gains tax. And
like
there is a hotel tax, a tourism tax. So to get an Airbnb license, you just need a building inspector to come make sure it's safe, and then you get a number, and you got to remit your tax every month. So you got to charge, I think it's like 22% or something crazy. So short-term rental, and then I'm going to build a storage locker, like a steel door within the walk-in closet in the master bedroom, so I can keep my booze, I can keep my scuba gear and all that stuff, and I just fly with my laptop.
And you have what you need there.
I got all my clothes and everything there.
That's fantastic.
And then we can do it as an Airbnb, and as you probably know, you can block off the dates that you're going to use it, or your friend's going to use it, and it's super easy. And then we've got some long-term that just kind of keep an eye, make sure, they can maybe even escort the people through when they come, but everything's going to be keypads, and
that's awesome.
You can electronically manage it from overseas.
And cameras and
So how would I get an investor to help me build this thing? Would I go to OREIG and just start chatting people up? Should I offer to give a 15-minute presentation on the Cayman Islands and the tax advantages in the real estate market? So, how would you do that?
What I would recommend for you specifically is a couple of things. I think the way that an organization like OREIG could help you, there's a few things. First off, with regard to your deal, for OREIG members, we do something at every event. It's called Open Mic, where OREIG members can stand up. They don't pay anything. I think it's because they're members. They get a few minutes, and we usually say it's the 90-second elevator pitch is kind of the model. Yeah. And they can promote not just real estate deals. They can promote their businesses. They can promote whatever they're doing, whatever they want to talk about. And sometimes they'll just share success stories. or lessons, right? I shared a lesson a few months ago that I unfortunately learned this summer. And sometimes that happens, but that's, again, kind of that point of sharing that education. So that's for OREG members, and if you are an OREG member, if you ever did decide to join OREG, that's where you would start. Is you would stand up and say, hey, I'm working on this project. It's really great. I have experience. I've lived in the community. I know what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Looking for an investor to help build this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are people there are members of OREG. That's what they do. They finance deals, right? They partner with people, and they like OREG because, as I mentioned, we're bringing new people in, and a lot of times people that are just getting into real estate, they maybe don't have the capital to do those types of investments, but they have the gumption, they have the wherewithal, they have the energy, they have the willingness, and they have the time and the ability to do a lot of that work, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be that kind of an opportunity. The second thing that you could do, is as a realtor, mm-hmm. so selfishly for yourself, is you can either sponsor OREG. There'd be an opportunity for you to then market not only your Cayman Islands project, but your real estate agent services and anything else that you wanted to promote, right, as a sponsor. So then, so that would be another opportunity. And then, of course, the third thing you could do is what you mentioned, is the level up from that. Is there's OREG has a different a couple of different sponsorship levels, and you could, depending on the sponsorship level, you could then do a full-on presentation around not just your project, but maybe becoming a facilitator for other projects or people who want to invest in that market, and tapping into the wealth and the capital that we have, both in OREG and also in the Okanagan here, to maybe drive even more projects. Right. Wonderful. Yeah. What does membership entail? Is it expensive? No, it's not. So when you think about what you get, and we've brought some of the top, every year we'll bring some of the top speakers in their fields into Kelowna. It's I can't remember. I've recently stepped away from the board of OREG, so I'm not actually on the board anymore. But we, I think it's $100 a month for an individual or a business, and then $149 for partners, and sometimes that's a couple, sometimes it's business partners, sometimes it's whatever. Oh, okay. So if my partner and I wanted to join, and be $149 a month, by myself is $100. That's right. And people can attend as guests. So you can go to one event as a guest for free, and we welcome everyone to come to the first event. And then after that, we ask that you join. I mean, OREG doesn't make a lot of money. Yeah. Right? The point of it is to finance, to provide the funds so that we can bring in, the most qualified speakers, the most knowledgeable people that we can. And you're probably going to pay for the room and all that. As you know, exactly. I'm sure you've put events on before. There's all those kind of capital costs, and that's what the membership drives. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So you stepped down from the board of OREG to focus on building a big white freestyle team. What's that all about? So I've been a freestyle skier my whole life, and you'll recall when we started this conversation, I said one of the reasons that we moved here is because I wanted my kids to grow up in a place where they could feel part of a community and a sense of community. And my connection to community has mostly come through sport. I've been involved in a lot of organizations over the year in business and stuff as well, and networking things, but the challenge with those is, you'll make friends and connections out of those, but let's be honest, everybody kind of has a vested interest, right? They want to either promote a product or create a network or sell more stuff or whatever, right? Yeah. So my real connection to community without any agenda has always been through sport. And as I mentioned, I've coached a lot of sports over the years. I've been coaching freestyle skiing since 2002 specifically. I've been teaching skiing since I was 16 years old, though, so over 20 years. And I'm extremely passionate about this sport. Canada's won, and I think this is still true, Canada's won more Olympic medals in freestyle skiing than any other sport. And it's a sport that is very, very proudly Canadian. We tend to be kind of in there for the World Championships every year in all the different disciplines. Mm-hmm. It's a very Canadian sport. Some people would say it's like as Canadian as hockey or lacrosse, right? And it's something that I grew up skiing. I grew up getting into freestyle. I was a bit of a punk kid and didn't really like ski racing, didn't enjoy the structure, and freestyle allowed me the freedom to express myself. And but I had a few injuries along the way, so that inhibited my ability as an athlete. And so I kind of early on moved into the coaching ranks, and as we've discussed already, that's led to other opportunities, and I really enjoy coaching. I'm very passionate about it. Whether it's coaching staff in a job environment or a job setting, or whether it's coaching athletes, I love helping people, and I love being part of that support system.
Yeah.
And so over the years, I've had the privilege of being the head coach for a couple of different freestyle teams. When we lived in Calgary, I was the head coach of the Bow Valley freestyle team, which is based in Banff. And so when we moved to Kelowna, I very quickly got involved with the freestyle team up at Big White. And a couple of years ago, an opportunity came to become the head coach of the team. So I took over the team. And now the team is in the process of transitioning from part of the Big White organization to its own entity. Right. And so I've taken on a new role as program director, and I'm going to be facilitating the program to kind of become its own independent organization. And we're pretty excited about this project. Yeah,
it's very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. One more question on the real estate investing group. Do some of your partners do the construction financing as well, or is it typically they're going to put a certain amount of equity in and then you're going to use a bank?
So you can do combinations. So and I can't comment on the guidelines in the Cayman Islands. I'm not familiar with the laws down there.
It's similar to here, but as foreigners, typically the banks want to see like 30-35% equity, just as a general rule.
Can that equity come from anywhere?
It can come from anywhere. Yeah.
So in Canada, I'll give you an example. The most underutilized vehicle in Canada is RRSP mortgages. Okay. So people have RSPs, they're invested in mutual funds or whatever they're invested in, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that you can actually take your RRSP money that's already sitting there, you can move it into what's called a self-directed RRSP under a trust, and there's a few companies out there that offer this product. And you can actually lend your money out inside the RRSP vehicle as a mortgage.
Wow.
And CMHC under certain situations allows you to finance up to 100%. So the way that a lot of joint venture deals get financed is with RRSP mortgages, because then maybe I only have 5%, or maybe I know you, we're friends, you trust me, and you know I'm going to do the work, and you want a bigger piece of the pie, so you put all the money in, and maybe we do a different split, right?
So there's all kinds of ways.
There's all kinds of ways to do it, but RRSP, and I don't know if you could use that in the Cayman Island, but as an example in Canada, like I haven't done a mortgage, like a traditional bank finance deal in a long time. Thankfully, through OREIG and other real estate connections, I have access to some private investors that they've got some money, and we tend to finance deals using those funds. And in those cases, then you're not beholden to a bank or a payment. And the biggest concern right now with mortgage deals in Canada is that the mortgage rules keep changing, and the government is changing them, not the banks. So the risk there as an investor is a rule might change that handicaps our project along the way, and we have no control, right? Whereas if you use RRSP mortgages or just straight capital investment, you kind of get to set your own rules, right?
Makes sense.
And as an investor, as an operator of investments, you want to make sure you have as much flexibility to protect your investor and protect their money, but also if you need to change course, or the timelines need to be adjusted, or something happens during the course of a project, you want to make sure that you have enough exit strategies and you have enough change capability in the project so you can adjust the project, right? You want to set yourself up for success at the end of the day, and traditional mortgage financing in Canada is becoming more and more limited as the rules become stricter and there's more constraints on that.
That's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some of the topics that you're working on for your public speaking career?
Yeah, so I started this conversation by saying I came to Kelowna on purpose. And so one of the side projects that I'm working on right now is I want to create, or I am creating, and it's nowhere near done, we're at the foundation level of this project, a framework that's really simple for people and families to kind of take account of their lives in a overall sense. So some of the factors would be like, what kind of people do you want to hang out with? What kind of physical environment do you want to live in? What type of community do you want to be a part of? What kind of work do you want to do every day? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? And how do you do more of what makes you happy and less of what makes you sad? and create some structures around that are really easy to follow, like step 1, step 2, step 3. Answer these 5 questions. So not overly complicated, but enough information that you can kind of create a picture or an image of what your ideal life looks like, and then take steps to move towards achieving that, right?
Yeah.
Living a life on purpose, right? And I've been fortunate enough. I've read a lot of books over the years, kind of about some of this stuff, right? And I find a lot of the self-help books are great, but the problem with self-help books is if they solve the problem, they're out of business. Right?
Yes.
The self-help industry is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if it ever solved the problem, there'd be no more need for the industry.
Correct.
Right? So I want to create something that solves the problem, right? I'm always someone who's been much more passionate about helping people than I am about any kind of material success or anything.
Yeah.
To my detriment, a lot of the time, I'm not going to lie, as a real estate investor, I tend to maybe not be as aggressive in negotiations as I should sometimes.
I think it will come back to you over time.
I'm a firm believer in that as well, right?
Yeah.
I think that I think the universe and the spirit take care of their own.
Yeah.
And so I firmly believe that. But so one of the projects that I'm working on is creating this framework, and then I want to introduce this framework in a public speaking manner. No, I wouldn't say seminars. Like, I don't want to run courses, and I definitely don't want to be a seminar operator. But I'm still working through what that looks like. So that's that's a project that we've just started. I've started with a partner, and we're very passionate about, and we're going to kind of see what it looks like when it's done.
Very cool.
And then the other one, of course, is I'm pretty passionate about real estate investment, and I'd like to do more real estate investment speaking. In the real estate investment realm, a lot of the speakers they tend to have an agenda or an angle, right? I mean, we all need to make money, so they tend to sell a lot of product, and it's great product. It's courses, it's books, it's audio books, it's whatever, it's information, and it's valuable information. But I find that none of them really focus on like the young person who's kind of interested in real estate and maybe likes their job. They don't want to quit their job and become a real estate professional investor or a flipper or a professional landlord or a whatever. They don't want the pressure of that. And I find a lot of the real estate investment stuff, as you likely have seen, is all about, you can make cash flow and quit your job and all this, it's a lot of that, rich dad, poor dad type stuff, right? Yeah. And I'd love to see something that's not that at all, that says, look, a lot of people have jobs they really like. They have a great life they really enjoy. But the blunt reality is we have a bit of a wage gap in Canada. So even if you have a good job, it might not pay you enough money to live the lifestyle you want. No matter how frugal or responsible you are with your wealth, it's just not enough money.
Yes.
So you need some alternate streams of income, but maybe you don't want to quit your job. You like your career. So how do you get into real estate in a way that's safe, secure, part-time, or even not part-time, even hands-off, right? And I find a lot of the material out there doesn't answer that question, I think because there's not a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to figure out an answer to that question.
That's great. Well, I wish you all the best of luck, because those are topics that are very dear to my heart.
Sure,
as
absolutely.
Well. And we need more education. And
absolutely.
So I think that's awesome. Who would you like to nominate, Jason, to come on the show in the future?
So a dear friend of mine, her name is Sandy McAllister. She's an independent life agent here in Kelowna. So she's an insurance advisor, but she does something that's really cool. She's very passionate about helping people budget and helping people manage their money in a realistic way. And so her business, while she is an insurance sales agent, her bread and butter is around finance education and teaching people how to manage money. And when you consider that, again, we're kind of talking about education as a bit of a theme today. I have a business degree from U of C. I didn't learn anything about personal finance, right? I've worked in banking for 15 years. Even the banks don't do a very good job of teaching people personal finance. Right? I have kids in the school system. The school system doesn't teach people about personal finance. Now, it's getting better, and I know there's a new finance course that I think the Ministry of Education is working on, but there isn't any education out there on personal finance.
Right.
And so her business, she's passionate about education as well, and passionate about teaching people how to manage their money in practical ways, so starting with a budget and things like that.
Yes.
And I'd love for her to be able to tell her story.
Wonderful. Jason, thanks so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed picking your brain.
Well, thanks for having me.
I think you will see me on the 20th.
I would look forward to it. I hope we can.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011, and he always says, yeah, one regret, and that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent, and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time, 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.